Hi everyone, my name is Brad Bartlett, and today I'm going to talk about denial of service attacks and some defense techniques which can help prevent or mitigate their damage. Before we get started, I'd just like to define what is meant by service attack. At its most basic level, this attack can be initiated by anyone with little to no technical knowledge, sometimes referred to as a script kiddie, by running a simple program targeted at an IP. Oftentimes, if the attacker's internet connection is faster than the target's connection will soon become saturated to the point that it can no longer send anything in or out, effectively denying its internet service, hence the name. Then comes distributed denial of service, or DDoS attacks. Here, multiple computers are involved, rather than just one. These attacks often rely on a form of a virus which runs silently in the background and takes control of an internet connection when requested. This software often looks to exploit vulnerabilities in older or unpatched versions of Windows, and then takes advantage of unsuspecting users' internet connections to join in on DDoS attacks. Instead of coming from a single location, these attacks could include hundreds, thousands, or even millions of computers. The largest botnet ever recorded, known as Burrito Lab, combined the resources of over 30 million computers around the world. Thankfully, it was shut down by authorities in November of 2010. Now I'm going to dive into a couple of specific examples of DDoS attacks from recent history, and then we'll see what lessons we may learn from them. In 2013, the nonprofit email anti-spam organization Spamhaus was targeted with what was at the time the largest DDoS attack in history. Spamhaus was quickly overwhelmed by the attack and reached out to the popular DDoS mitigation provider Cloudflare for help. The attack continued over the course of a week and reached 309 gigabits per second of traffic at its peak. Following the attack, a Dutch national living in Spain and a 17-year-old male from London was arrested for the attack in connection with the Russian-based spam group known as Stophouse. The attack on Spamhaus shocked the internet as it employed a new form of DDoS attack which was on a scale previously unseen. This is known as a Layer 3 attack and is not as easily as filtered. As Matthew Prince, CEO of Cloudflare, stated in a post-mortem article released on the attack, quote, "Put simply, if you have a router on a 10 gigabit per second port and someone sends you 11 gigabits per second of traffic, it doesn't matter what intelligent software you have to stop the attack because your network link is completely saturated." End quote. DNS amplification relies on misconfigured DNS servers running without limits on what they respond to, in a network which allows for source IP spoofing. Finally, they use UDP rather than TCP. This is because, unlike TCP, UDP does not require a handshake, which makes it easier to spoof. As you see in the example above, you can send a query to a particular target. Actually, you're sending it to the DNS server, and you have spoofed the IP address of your target, so that's what's going to receive the reply. You notice eDNS equals 0. That means you're going to try to acquire as much DNS information as you can. No TCP, meaning you're going to send it over UDP, which, as we spoke about earlier, is better for spoofing, and the largest buffer size possible. So in this example, you see a 64-byte query is going to result in a 3,363-byte response, which is a 50 times amplification factor. Now you start to multiply that over several open DNS or thousands of open DNS servers, and then you can see how you can quickly overwhelm even large internet platforms. That brings us to the DNS attack. On October 21st, 2016, the largest DDoS attack in history was carried out against the domain name provider DIN. This attack caused major outages for internet platforms which relied on the service, such as Amazon, Netflix, Verizon Communications, and Twitter, just to name a few. Users all over the US and Europe, particularly on the US East Coast, were unable to access the internet during the attack. The Guardian and TechTarget both reported the attack strength at a previously unimaginable 1.2 terabits per second. To put that in perspective, Minnesota Internet Traffic Studies estimates the total U.S. internet backbone traffic at 24 terabits per second. This attack was executed through a botnet consisting of countless IoT, or Internet of Things, devices. These are items like DVRs, baby monitors, televisions, webcams, even internet-connected refrigerators, virtually anything with a connection to the net. These devices have been infected with malware, which links to what's known as the Mirai botnet, which is connected to IoT devices all over the globe. This is an important reminder that as the PC industry closes loopholes and pushes patches and OS updates to make establishing zombie PCs for botnets more difficult, malware creators simply expand into a new attack vector. So then, how do we defend against these data cannons? One major deterrent to these forms of attacks could be mitigated by implementing what is known as BCP 38, or Best Common Practice 38. This is documented by the Internet Engineering Task Force and states that good networks don't let packets originate from IPs they don't own egress out of the network. This would defend against the spoofing described earlier. According to the Center for Applied Internet Data Analysis, in their State of Spoofing report, currently 33.3% of networks allow for spoofing. So obviously a large chunk of the internet. Next, cleaning up the OpenDNS resolvers would defend against another major attack vector. And just to clarify, when I say OpenDNS resolvers, I'm not referring to OpenDNS or Google DNS. This is referring to messy, sloppy resolvers, which allow for any type of traffic. To combat this, the Open Resolver project has been started to identify these resolvers in an attempt to get them up and more secure. Currently, the project has identified 32 million such resolvers on the internet, with 28 million of those posing a significant security threat. Cleaning those up would go a long way in reducing DDoS attacks. Lastly, employing a DDoS mitigation provider, such as Cloudflare, or at least using some of their tactics, such as load balancers and Anycast, to spread your footprint as wide as possible, thus diluting DDoS attacks and not allowing them to focus on a single location, is almost required for websites of scale on the modern internet. Of course, when dealing with the attacks that we've talked about today, the scope involved with them, there are many different filtering techniques you can use on a more granular level, but when it comes to these large, again, data cannons, it's not going to matter. So in the essence of the report that I've done today on the attacks that I've described, these are the best practices in defending or at least mitigating against such an attack. Once again, my name has been Brad Bartlett, and thank you.